Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. So, in addition to the weekly comic book poll videos, I also want to do reviews of other stuff I'm reading because I'm subscribed to DC Universe Infinite and Marvel Unlimited, as well as library-centric apps like Libby and Hoopla. So, I'm not just reading new stuff, I'm also trying to get caught up on stuff I might have missed. So, this is going to be the first episode of Image Initiation. Image comics have always been on my radar. I've never done really much of a deep dive into them. Growing up, I was really into superheroes. Superman was my favorite because I also grew up in Kansas and wrote for my school newspaper and kind of related to Superman quite a bit. But I know there's so much out there that I haven't touched, and Image is kind of uh, the kind of go-to primetime indie publisher out there. So I want to familiarize myself with more of their work specifically. I have read some things by them. You can kind of see barely under the mic over there. I'll get better at this, I promise. There's the Saga, the first like deluxe edition for Saga, which I really liked, but I really dislike how it's unfinished and how long it's taking. So I haven't really continued on with that series. Just kind of waiting, I think, at this point. I have read the first few deluxe editions of Invincible back years ago at this point, way before the show, and really liked it, but again, just kind of fell off. So this is my kind of recommitment to getting into Image Comics because there's so much stuff there that is just untapped that I know is good and I've heard is good, and I really want to give a shot. So today, for the for the first episode of Image Initiation, I read all of Descender by Jeff Lemire and art by Dustin Nguyen. And wow, what a first kind of Image property to dive into. I know there's a sequel series called Ascender that's about 18 issues. Haven't touched that yet. I literally just finished this probably about an hour ago and just kind of wanted to get my fresh thoughts out on it. So the first section of this video will be spoiler free. Second section, I'll dive into some more key plot points. I'll make sure there's ample time for you to exit out of the video before the spoiler section if you want to read it on your own if what I say sounds good. So that's kind of just a brief overview. So the story takes place in a future where kind of robots and androids are commonplace, mostly used as kind of servants and workforce for manual labor to help humanity. But there is one day where these massive robots show up kind of in the sky. Kind of reminded me a little bit of the images I see of Galactus, where someone's looking up from a building and you just see like his shoulders and his head, that they eventually call harvesters. And they show up simultaneously at all of the planets that are kind of overseen by the UGC, or the United Galactic Council. And basically, the harvesters devastate the planets and just attack. Humanity isn't wiped out, but they're heavily damaged across all of these kind of core worlds. I guess in some ways, if you think about it, it's kind of like the plot point in the Star Wars sequel trilogy, where Starkiller Base takes out like all of the, like, I think Senate planets or whatever, except in this universe, planets don't die. It's just a ton of damage and humanity, and also there's a ton of aliens as well who kind of coexist. All organic life is kind of crippled a little bit. So that's kind of the basic setup of the story, and then kind of the next key event is 10 years later, where there's an android boy called Tim 21, who wakes up on this remote mining colony just to find that every human on the colony is dead. He's not sure how, not sure why, but he sends out a distress signal to the rest of the galaxy, and it turns out he's key to figuring out what the heck has happened, and why everything has gone down as it has. That's the very basic story setup. So it's 32 issues. This is the compendium, which I borrowed off of Hoopla, which if you have a library card, just to your local library, you can use Hoopla or Libby and basically borrow digital comics, especially Hoopla. I think Hoopla has every Image comic. There's a very good chance I could be wrong, but scrolling through, I think they have every Image comic, and even recent ones that came out just like this month. So it's a great place for this series, honestly. But this compendium compiles all 32 issues, so the entire series. And honestly, I was hooked. Read this all in about probably, it's 770 pages. I think I read it in maybe 4 or 5 hours between last night and this morning. I was just kind of riveted by it. And I think a lot of that does have to do with the story. So obviously in terms of characters, you have Tim 21, who I mentioned earlier. You have Jin Kwan, who is kind of the father of modern robotics. He's the one who created the models of robot for Tim and a lot of the kind of robots and androids who are out there in the universe at the current time. And then I would say the other main character is probably Telsa Nagoki. She is basically sent out by the United Galactic Council, or the UGC, to retrieve Tim, to figure out what the heck is going on. So it's just, it's a really interesting kind of mystery. I've seen some people say it's kind of like derivative in some ways of like Mass Effect, or it's mostly Mass Effect I've seen. And I've seen people say that they lose interest as the story goes on, but I couldn't have been more different for me. And I think a lot of that is the writing. I think Jeff Lemire really captures kind of the essence of all of the different characters. Like Tim feels very childlike and naive, even though he's an android. Telsa, you see character development throughout the story of kind of just being like a by the numbers army kid to something else. And Jin Kwan is a fascinating character who you love to hate. But at the end of the day, you still kind of feel like you want him to succeed in the end. So yeah, I think Lemire's writing is really solid, but I think the art carries this quite a bit. Dustin Nguyen's art style is very much kind of watercolor, and it's interesting. I don't know how really art works, but it looks like on the pages, it looks like the background is textured, almost like he is painting on a canvas. So I'll show a few examples of some of my favorite panels relatively early on. So this is Tim finding his kind of robot pet companion after he wakes up after the 10 years and finds all of the human colonists dead. Oh boy. I will learn how to put panels up on the screen so they don't look bad. And by that I mean actually editing. It's on my to-do list. But the artwork is just phenomenal from start to finish. I wish, it's one of those things where like you say, oh, I wish more comic book art look like this. But then if more comic book art looked like this, it wouldn't be as unique. So it's kind of that line. But some of the panels are just some are just haunting, and some are just like, even the ugly stuff is kind of beautiful, to be honest. Um, there's one more I'll show where it's just like the coloring as well is just phenomenal. Um, so yeah, I mean, if I had to give this a rating, I'd probably give it, out of 5, I'd probably give it like a solid 4. I think that some of the subplots, mostly one of the subplots at the end, kind of just seems very kind of random and not that important that they spend more time on than they should. But it didn't really take away too much of the story. So sorry, I'm trying to look. It is illustrated by Dustin Nguyen. I was trying to see if there's a different colorist, but I think it's just Dustin Nguyen on colors as well, which is fantastic. So yeah, so I'd highly recommend it. It's, if you love sci-fi, kind of futuristic, kind of space mysteries, I think you'd really like it. But I think that's going to be the end of the spoiler-free section. So spoiler section starts now. If you're checking out, thanks for tuning in. And if you end up reading it, come back for the spoiler section. I appreciate it. So, spoilers. I was pretty shocked when it was revealed that Quan did not really work for his place in society, and him and his mentor had found this ancient robot, and he had basically betrayed his mentor, stole everything, stole all the data, and used that to create his own robots, and became kind of the face of modern robotics. Quan is just so unlikable for so much of the story. At the beginning, you're like, oh, he's like trying to help, and you're rooting for him quite a bit. But then that first betrayal, and he just keeps betraying Telsa, and it's like, okay. But I think by the end, he gets it, and saves Telsa. That's a joke early on where he keeps calling her Tesla. Tim, I had a lot of sympathy for. I think it was really interesting to see the kind of nature versus nurture of Tim 21 versus Tim 22, and just how kind of unhinged Tim 22 was. And I will say the Ganesh aspect of the story, the religious zealot pig people, I didn't really understand, I guess, their purpose in the overall narrative too much. They seem to just kind of show up as a third faction that just hates robots as well and doesn't like the UGC, and it didn't really seem like that a purpose. Let me know if maybe I misread that in the comments. But I will say that the Hardwire I thought were interesting, the Robot Rebellion, and obviously the biggest thing I couldn't really talk about in the non-spoiler section was Andy. And I think Andy's turn back from hating robots to being okay with them, I think happened a little too fast, a little too suddenly. But at the same time, I think that he had enough characterization otherwise, and his relationship with Effie was interesting enough to where I don't think it ended up being as much of a problem as originally I thought. But again, that might, who knows, that might change over time. Opinions tend to change. So, but overall, seeing the ancient robot faction and seeing that the attack 10 years ago was just a warning, and having the test be basically like okay, this was a warning. Here's a test to see, will you live equally with synthetic life, or will you continue to just focus on subservience and forcing them to basically serve you? And humanity failed the test, and they came back at the end ready to go. And yeah, I think, again, I like it a lot, and this could just be my first Image comic syndrome. And again, I've seen a lot of divided opinions about the story, but again, I think it's a solid 4 out of 5. So yeah, I think that is the end of the first episode of Image Initiation. Not sure what I will be reading next. Part of me kind of wants to go to Ascender just to kind of finish off the series. But I have, I have a ton of series bookmarked on Hoopla to read. So I'm not sure how often I'll come out with this series, but be on the lookout for it. It's something that I'm really enjoying exploring just because I am so deeply familiar with DC and Marvel and kind of general superhero mythos, that experiencing the medium in a different way is a fun new experience for me. So yeah, thank you so much for joining me, and I hope you will stick around and check out my new comic book day video this coming Wednesday, August 27th. So yeah, thanks again for watching, and I'll see you soon.